Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Peak First Anxiety. I'm joined by a very special guest today. She's a grief-informed neurodivergent specialist, founder of the ADHD Holistically, with over 25 years experience as an educator and a background in ADHD coaching, yoga instruction, grief education. She brings a holistic, deeply personal approach to helping neurodivergent individuals. Please welcome in the one and only Jennifer Dall. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Pete. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well,
I'm
thank you
excited.
so much for being here. I was so excited when I got the email to have you come on. I was just like, let's go, because I love learning new things. So why don't you tell me
Yeah,
a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into the topic of today's episode.
sure. I started out in education. I was a teacher. I taught students with disabilities, ADHD, learning disabilities, mostly also general education students. I did that since about the mid 90s, so a while. I was doing this for a while and learning a lot, learning from my students, learning from my coursework, learning from all of the things that I did. And over time, we all started to learn more about ADHD. So I learned a lot more. And as time went on, especially as we started to hit, around the pandemic, things like that, ideas that I'd had that perhaps I had ADHD really started to get strong. I had played with the idea for a long time. I had thought about it and I'd ask people and they'd say, oh, no, you couldn't possibly have ADHD because you've done all these things. So often we think about, the 8-year-old boy who is totally unable to control his impulses and is jumping all over the place when we think about ADHD.
Hmm.
But more and more things happened and we learned more and I learned more. And I finally got to the point where I went to a doctor and I said, like, these are all the reasons. This is what's going on. And she listened to me and we went through, some steps and it was like, yeah, you're right. I then I loved teaching. This is where kind of some of the grief is. I mean, we've all been through grief, and the pandemic brought a lot of grief, but my husband died suddenly,
Oh, I'm
rather
so sorry.
traumatically. And shortly after that is when I decided to leave education. I was in a place where I could do this, and I wanted to go out and start doing my own thing and working with people in the real world, people out there doing things. And over time, and as I learned and lived and experienced more about grief and ADHD, it just became more of a passion of mine. I'm still in the process of learning so much, but from my experiences, from professionals I worked with, from doctors I work with, from people I've talked to, just seeing how ADHD has become so impactful, how we've learned so much more, but there's still so much more to learn because a lot of people don't really see that they connect. They want to treat one thing or another. For my experience, I think we'll talk about this more later, but it started off with when things weren't going well, it was a diagnosis of depression. And that was
Yeah.
just it. And depression, and here's some meds, and let's go on our way. Well, that helped a little bit. It didn't really help. And the more I learned, the more I came to these conclusions that we needed to be looking at something else. So now I reach out, I try to listen to people, work with people who have ADHD and other things. Some of the stuff I call it is plus one, if it's grief, if it's other things. I just last week met with somebody who was just so deep into it. And I just, I just kind of held her hand over the Zoom, honey, I see what you're going through and
Yeah.
I've been there and my heart goes out to you and we're going to work it out. So that's for them. It makes me feel good when, I mean, I guess I've gone through all of this to help one person, if nothing
I
else.
think, though, the thing I really like about meeting you just now is that the fact that you can speak from experience, like you can tell that you've been through these things. And I think that's what a lot of people relate to is that, you've been through it. So like, it's not like you're just some person, oh, well, I'm an educated of this, and then they're never gone through these things. I think that people that go through these things, it's a lot more relatable for people because then they don't be so standoffish. They're like, well, what does this person know? And you're like, no, I've been through this. I know what you're going through. Trust me, I understand more than you realize. And then you start sharing little bits to them and they're like, okay, well, Dr. Chen gets it. Okay. She understands, what I'm going through. And I think that's what makes it so relatable though, even though you're not in the same room with the person, it's just they can know that you've been there, you felt these things, you know what they're going through. And I think that's what a lot of people that they when they meet you, I'm thinking that's what they're feeling too. He's like, man, all right, well, she's been through this, And I think it's great though. I mean, because that's the hardest part is, that connection part. A lot of times, we're not so much in person anymore. It's a lot of things is going all digital. It's a little tougher to connect with people via, Zoom calls and stuff because you're not in the same room with them.
I agree. I know that some of the greatest inspiration and help I've gotten has been from speaking or hearing or reading or listening to somebody who has been through any little part of what I've been through. And I know that when I listen to somebody who hasn't been through it, it's just so much harder to listen to them, to take their advice, to give them a lot of credit. And they may be perfectly brilliant people, but when I can sit here and say, I have been through these things, and even if our things don't match up, I see that you've been through things and I hold that space and I'm not going to tell you just do it or get over it or it's time or it's not that big of a deal. I also understand how much masking with all of these things go on, the ADHD, the
Hmm.
grief, and other things, how much, especially if you have it together, how you can look like you have it together when, you don't have it together.
Yeah.
And other people just see that and then they're like, oh, well, you're fine. You'll be fine. You're doing great.
No, I agree. I think, what the first thing came to thought when you said about masking is people just thinking you have it all together was the guy that recently passed away from the Ellen show who had unfortunately committed suicide. I was thinking about that because I'm like, look, he has money, he has fame, he has all these things, but at the end of the day, he still has problems. People are just going to look at the fact that, oh, well, he was famous, this and that, but not look at the fact that, unfortunately, he decided to take his life. Even though we had all these things in place for him, he wasn't struggling, he wasn't poor, any of these kind of things, that everybody tries to always just kind of, oh, well, it's not that big deal. Oh, yeah, he had everything and he had no reason to do it. That's not the case, though. Just because you have everything doesn't mean that you don't have feelings in the end of the day and you don't have these thoughts. And I think it's a perfect example of, everybody deals with something.
Yeah, I agree. I don't talk about this with a lot of people. It's not that it's a secret, but my husband actually died from suicide. And so I know that that Ellen, the person on Ellen's show, and my husband and other people, because it's a crisis also,
Hmm.
especially with men, they may have felt they didn't have anything. They had all these things and they had nowhere to go and no one to listen to for some of the same reasons people saying, just figure it out, just
Hmm.
work it out.
Or get over it or cheer
Get
up. All
over
this other
it.
great advice they love to give us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I see that in people and I can just hold completely active, unconditional, positive regard for you. Like I'm just, maybe too much, but I can just be the person that you put that on for a little while. Somebody who's going to look at you because I know how many people look at me and what they see is one thing.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree completely. So let's get into today's topic,
Yeah.
everybody. It's when anxiety, depression, and trauma crash the party. To me, it's like, you're going on that world, you're going on that one-on-one date and then all the friends show up to the party kind of thing.
Yes.
It's like, oh, great. Everybody else is here too kind of thing.
Yeah. Or you get invited to, I don't know, a wedding or a party and they're like, it's you plus one. Come on in.
We
We've
got
added
plus three
something
with us in
new to
this
the
party.
party. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So why is it that everything shows up together? Like I know ADHD, depression, anxiety, and all that kind of stuff all kind of go hand in hand, but a lot of people tend to put the ADHD to the side, though.
I think part of that is because we've had such a hard time diagnosing it and looking at it and really seeing that it's there. When you look at this whole generation of people, like I said, if you go in with certain complaints or issues, the number one response tends to be, here, you're anxious or you're depressed. So here's an antidepressant, here's an anxiety medicine, and that's just going to make it all better. Which even if that is the issue, in my opinion, just the medication's not going to make it all better.
No, I
Anyway,
agree.
there's reasons and there's things there. Speaking for so ADHD brings certain things to your mind, executive dysfunction and emotional dysregulation and all of that, and then something like grief, whether it's from a death, a loss of a job, um, maybe kind of a grief about the world around us. Think you've lost something, and that also brings about problems. So if you're having trouble remembering things or working through things or managing things emotionally, they just get worse, And so when like a grief comes about because of a loss, there's probably things in your life that have changed. Someone has died, you've lost a job, you've lost a home, you've lost something important enough that it's upset you, and it's doing these things to you, and those all things all need to be taken care of. And that's hard enough with grief, all the things you have to do no matter what that grief is about. But you add an ADHD, which also can have trouble prioritizing and getting things done and emotionally regulating when you're being bombarded, and it just explodes. So it can be like I found a really, really great therapist finally, she knows a lot about grief, she knows a lot about suicide, all of this, but there's things she doesn't know about ADHD because that's not her training, and she probably
Yeah.
got like one class in it. And so I've been teaching her, and she knows that, and she's gotten to be like to like check in with me and asks me like, does this make
That's so
sense?
cool though. I mean, you meet
It
this
it is.
person's helping you, and then in the same sense, you're teaching them and expanding their knowledge too. So it's an exchange, really. She's helping you, you're teaching her, and she's reaching out to you. That's so cool though.
Yeah, and that's just another reason why I just kept developing the whole, plus one, plus grief, plus all of this is no one person can know all these things. So she's big enough, she's smart enough to know that she has to ask for it, that she can say, I don't know this. Explain this to me. Like if she makes a suggestion or we're talking about something and she like falls into the just do it trap, and I laugh at her because we have that relationship. And then we'll talk about it, like why that's not going to happen, why we need to look at this a different way. But I've also far enough along the process that I'm able to articulate that. A lot of people they might just give up or they might just take it as another story they're telling themselves. Like even my therapist says, just do it. So what's wrong with me? Well,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
got some
No, that
things
makes
going
sense.
on, but let's work on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so cool though that you guys are on that level where you
I do
can
too.
can just talk about those things. And I think that that's a lot of times people, I think with therapy, get a little discouraged as they go in and then they feel like they just deal with it. And I've told somebody recently that who said she was thinking about talking to somebody. I said, listen, do me a favor. I said, for the love of God, please do not stay with the therapist that you feel that is not helping you. I think they're already programmed to know, hey, this ain't gonna work for me either. That's cool. Swipe on and go. Don't stay with somebody you feel is not adding value. And it's so cool though that you guys are exchanging ideas and you're being able to share your experience with her too. And she's willing to learn because a lot of people I think get intimidated by that. Well, these people know more than me, but it's like, no, take it away as you can learn something new from this person. And that's the great thing with these interviews is I learn new things from people all the time. So it's really cool the information I'm given and I have the honor to ask these questions and learn different things and then go explore the different avenues of what people are getting into these days. And I think it's funny because everyone knows depression, anxiety, and trauma, but then when it comes to ADHD, it's not really real known. Or, like everybody calls everything bipolar, and it's really, maybe it's not bipolar. It could be BPD. Too many things just kind of go hand in hand a little too much, and people go, okay, well, they automatically give it a label instead of really digging into it to see what it is.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And when we look at how we're just learning new things, so, all along ADHD, you say, was showing up in this way, but it wasn't seen as ADHD because, maybe you're doing well, you're a female and you don't, present like we think ADHD looks like. So we think it's these other things and we treat these other things and then other things happen, all the griefs, all the trauma, all the things that are going on and it's not re-looked at. I think that's one of the things too and one of my frustrations when I finally, because I went back and forth. Do I really push this with a doctor when you can't even get into a doctor? They're probably going to gaslight me. But like we don't it seems like we don't re-look at things when we
Yeah.
have more information.
That or
You
we
know,
don't get a re-diagnosis.
we
And
don't
then
get a re-diagnosis.
we're so jagged about the fact that, oh, well, they
Yes.
misdiagnosed me the first time, but you have to understand they don't have as much information as they did before. Now they have now, and it's different. Like if you look at the evolution, even medicine, the evolution of medicine, things have changed. Like we didn't know the same things we knew back then. They knew what they had, that's what they knew. And then people get so mad. It's like, what are you mad about? I mean, these people everything's constantly evolving. If you think about it, technology, medicine, mental health, all these things are, now we're doing televisits these days. Hell, we didn't have those back in the day. You had to go to an office and sit in the office. Now you could do it from the comfort of your home and then people get mad. It's like, why are you getting mad? Because somebody had done the best with what knowledge they had. And it's, oh, well, everything's a malpractice suit. It's like, y'all are just quick to jump to the conclusions of
Yeah.
things. And it's with the pandemic though, it shot everybody's through the roof. A lot of people's things started coming out, like people saw these different things. You're isolated, so obviously depression's going to kick in hard because you're already isolated, and you already want to be isolated when you're feeling depressed. Anxiety, you're freaking out about what to do next because you don't know what's causing this problem or when you're going to get sick. I had a guest on yesterday we were talking to. He had OCD, and him and I were joking around. It's like I can only imagine what it was like having OCD with the pandemic going on. It's like you had to walk around the 6-foot ruler between you and the next person. He laughs and goes, yeah, pretty much what it's like. I was like, you're probably going to be the bubble man, huh? And he laughed at that too, because you think about it, like, you start freaking out because you're so paranoid because you don't know anything. And like, they didn't know anything about COVID. They didn't know what the hell it was. It was killing people off at an alarming rate. And of course, now we got to start shifting blames. If this person blames that person, instead of trying to figure out what the root cause of the problem is, we're too busy over here blaming everybody else, saying it's their fault or it's their fault. And it's like, I don't get it. I feel like the internet is, it's good and evil. It's like the angel on your shoulder. You have the
Yes.
angel and then you have the devil here. You get the great information and then you get these people over here. They're just so influential, like the devil would be to you, and just kind of convincing you that these things are right instead of you checking the credibility source of what these people have researched. It's
Uh,
kind of like the guy that was on Instagram. He was saying that depression isn't real. I'm like, let's go ask some people that have depression, bud. Let me tell you, they're going to tell you it's about as real as it gets.
yeah. Yeah, and I think, during the pandemic, we lost all structures. I think some of us do well when we're in school. I mean, you may think, well, people with ADHD, they're stupid or they can't do well in school, but for some of us, that structure, it works. So I was in school, I taught school, I continued in school. All those structures, like it taught me when to get up, when I had to leave, when I ate lunch. And it all went away during the pandemic for me, for most people. And that just opened up time in this way. And so ADHD people tend to have trouble with time, and people who are grieving and trauma tend to have trouble with time. So it's this big time blog. And then I left education to start my own business and my own things. And wow, I think you're doing that too. So like, all of a sudden time is just this bizarre concept that I don't know how to handle. And I've been working through that, figuring out how to structure my time, how to relook at everything I've always learned. I mean, I think the pandemic opened up a lot of things. And if we could take the time and look inside ourselves, I think that's where we can come out of this better.
Did you find it easier though being an educator to get those systems in place? I figured it may be easier for you though because you've already been through the process of structure. Because when you're doing a classroom setting, you got to have a structure of time schedule for things. Did you find it easier with that background for you to get it structured?
Somewhat. I taught secondary mostly, and I liked that best, and I did that best because it's like, 57-minute periods or whatever, and here's the bell, and you do this, and you've got quarters, and you've got semesters, and then you just plug in the things. So that I think did good for me, was good. I realized that summers and vacations, but especially summer because it's long, could be hard. And I really had a hard time figuring out why it would be
Hmm.
hard. And it took a lot of stepping back and looking at, well, all the structure is gone. I didn't teach summer school. And then I had my daughter, and even then with her, yeah, I think it gave a lot of structures that kind of held me in check.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
too
y- so
much,
y- so you
but yeah.
mentioned your daughter. How old's their daughter, by the way?
She is 26.
So, do you guys have open conversations about mental health in general? Just being a female, going through what now is the internet giving this perception to women that they have to be a certain thing, because I could just only imagine the poor things that girl had to see and just like, have to explain it. And then I know she saw you in your situation. Did she notice like some changes in you when you had your ADHD, or have you openly talked to her about that?
I've talked to her a little bit about it. She knows I'm doing some things now. She knows who I worked with. She is at law school right now.
Awesome.
She's also not as open about things. She also went through the death of her father at a different age. And then this is a group of kids who, her junior year of college, she got sent home for the pandemic. Like, they've had a lot of things happen. I try to remain open to it and talk to her about it, but I also don't want to push her
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
know she's going through her own things. But she also, I believe, knows that we can talk about these things. We've talked about the grief, we've talked about how hard it is. So I'm not one to push it.
Yeah, no, I
And
get that. That's a
she's
great idea,
she's
though. You don't want to
doing
push it.
she's working through her steps, but I am 100% supportive. And I talk to her about some of the things I've done and some of the things I'm going through. And there's times I'll just say, like, some things are really hard. Like, just today, I'm finally having central air put into our house. And this was something my husband and I had talked about and all this stuff. And I thought that, well, expensive, a little destructive. I didn't really think it was going to be a big deal. And then they showed up at my house this morning, and I probably spent an hour crying because I don't know, because this is grief, because this is how grief and
Hmm.
ADHD and emotional regulation all come together over something that somebody else would look at and be like, what's the problem?
Yeah,
Do you not want to
exactly.
do this? Like, no, I do, but there's all this.
Yeah,
And
there's all the
so,
memories tied to, you're having the conversation with him and now he's not here for that conversation and things like that too. And I know you mentioned a lot of them overlap? How do they overlap though? That's the real question. Like I know you have all these different things that stack up, but some of them tend to kind of blend together.
Right. I would say so. Some examples is after someone dies, if that's your grief,
Hmm.
and if you're the adult in the situation, there's a lot you have to do just to get get the stuff done. And ADHD, so the grief that makes that hard. And then things that you don't even know you have to do until you're there with bills and fighting with people and telling repeatedly, no, he can't come to the phone, to quote Taylor Swift, because he's dead. You know, like that kind of thing. And so you've got all these things you have to do, whether it's death or you've lost your job and you need a new one. And then you've got ADHD, which has a hard time prioritizing and getting started. And so you've got this big list, and ADHD sees this huge list and struggles to know where to even start. And ADHD has a lot of where it's interest based, like I'm really good at doing things I'm interested in. And, there's not a lot on that list I'm interested in. I don't want to have to do it. I don't like the reason I have to do it, and I don't want to do it. And so they would just all come together. And so using support, kind, emotional friend support for the grief part of it, and then also realizing here's some strategies with the ADHD of how I can manage this list, pare this list down, tackle it one step at a time, and give myself grace, because these are all mixing together into this big overwhelm,
Yeah. Yeah.
emotional,
Big old melting pot is
physical,
just complete. Yeah.
detail overwhelm.
Yeah. So do you have
So
any
that's one
advice
way.
for anybody that might have ADHD? Just like, hey, listen, here's some tips for you, just something to give them a little insight, because anybody listening that doesn't have it, this is still going to be informative for them because they can understand what exactly people with ADHD deal with. And then the flip side after that, maybe give the people that don't have it, that deal with someone may have it, maybe give them a little advice on like, hey, this is how you could better, accommodate to them to help them out. You know what I'm saying? Let's give them a little something here.
Yeah. So I think really looking at yourself and giving yourself grace and saying there's a lot going on right now. Remembering at other times you handled things better. Other times you were able to. Looking around and seeing what kind of supports you have. And it may not be the people you thought. Anyone who's gone through deaths can probably tell you there's going to be some people who you thought were going to be there, your ride or dies, who disappear. And there's going to be some people who you weren't even that aware of, who will come through for you. So what do you need and who can give you that kind of support? And then looking at what works for you and just taking it really, really small and really easy, because these are big things. ADHD is big, grief is big, it's big. And I like to look down at like the little subtle things, the little teeny tiny things as a place to start. Something I started looking at now that I wish I'd known in the past was this idea of looking at things like it's an experiment. I'm just going to try this thing for a day, for a week. This is an experiment to see if I do this, does it help? Does it not help? Can I tweak it? What can I do? Because we tend to get overwhelmed with all the details when there's other things going on and the emotions get involved and the stories, because we've all heard the stories about ourselves. That can be a lot. So if you have ADHD somewhere, whether it's people whether you're going out to a grief group, an ADHD group, a therapist, a yoga class, whatever your thing is, really try to find someone who can at least be there with you in some way. And if if you're around somebody who has ADHD, I would say listen to the person, be there non-judgmental, and also learn for both groups. Learn. There's a couple of good podcasts that I've liked that I tell people about, whether they're going through it or they're helping somebody who's gone through it. There's one that's about ADHD called Climbing the Walls. It's from understood.org, and it came out fairly recently. It's about 6 episodes, and a woman goes through this process of trying to research why during the pandemic and everything, all these women seem to be coming out of the woodwork with ADHD. But in the process, she talks about her ADHD and other women with ADHD. And I found it very powerful and confirming to hear what other people have gone through. It's like, hey, there's a whole tribe of people out there like that.
Yeah.
Another one for grief is Anderson Cooper has
Oh, I
one.
love
It's a few
Anderson
years old
Cooper.
now. All it is, I should know this. It starts off, it's 2 seasons. The first season in particular, he goes to his mom. I didn't know his mom was Gloria Vanderbilt. I don't know. He goes to her place to start cleaning it out. And so he's talking about grief, and then he talks to people about grief, people who have lost people in grief. And that's another one where it's just like, it's so spot on Both
Mhm.
of these podcasts, I think for whether you're going through it or you know somebody, I think it just gives you a window into what's going on in a very, very powerful ways.
Especially Anderson Cooper, man. He was huge on CNN and all that. I loved
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper. He was the
Yeah.
only person I tuned in for 90% of the time just because I loved him. Just the way he'd
Yeah.
talk about things and the way he'd report about things and the fact that he's willing to open so much of the doors of his life up to people to see like, hey,
Yeah,
listen,
he
this is
does.
so
'Cause his
I could see
brother
that.
died by suicide. One of the most powerful ones was Stephen Colbert was on there, and his, brothers and father were killed in a plane crash when he was young. I mean, it's like, you gotta listen to these where you it's okay to cry, but it's like a good cry. It's like
Because it
there's somebody
touches you
out
out. Oh,
there.
no, I feel trust me, on this show, there's only one time someone's actually got me to tear up, and it was, a woman named Tip Carson. Me and her were talking about her brother, and it was just hard to listen to. Like, you listen to his battle with addiction and things like that, then you find out there's another layer to it. It wasn't just that, it was the fact that grandfather and the dad were both verbally and physically beating this poor guy down in the corner of the room where, he did the same thing to her a couple times where he attacked her or whatever in that corner, and she was always wondering what the deal was with the corner. And then later on, before he ended up taking his life, he literally was telling her about it, and then she found out about it. And it was an interesting dynamic because then she wrote a book and was telling the story about it, and now the whole world knows what's going on. And the relationship between her and her dad was interesting at first, but then it kind of brought them closer because now the whole thing was out in the light and everything like that, and it's so interesting to see these things, and then that's so cool. I'm gonna check it out though because I love Anderson
Yeah.
Cooper, and then Stephen Colbert come out and sharing his, that's so cool when you get to see some of these guys you see on TV every day, just getting real with you and sharing real things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, they're crying. And it's like everybody's crying. But, and then so you listen to these and maybe something tickles some part of you, like your story about the corner, like maybe, and that's not happened to you, but like maybe it makes some connection about, "Oh, I get it. I get now why this other thing's been happening or why this always happens or what's going on." It kind of opens up your mind to other possibilities.
I agree. I agree completely because, and then you also hear people's stories and sometimes you can relate to that story. You're like, oh, well, I don't
Yeah,
feel alone now. So
yeah,
and so's story empowered me to, listen. And I've had people on the show that have come on that have heard somebody else's story and been like, well, now I want to come tell my story. And, because when I was inviting people early on, they were like, well, I don't know about a podcast. I'm like, listen, let me tell you how this works. You come in, we talk, and there's no judgment. It's a judgment free zone. Like, I've done about 200 plus of these things now, and I can't tell you the number of times I hit record and just not sure what the next thing is going to happen is. And I love the unpredictability of this is because you don't know what is going to happen. Like we had a guy talking about his suicidal ideation on the phone, and he literally he was sitting there talking about, oh, this morning I had the gun, and he's going into great detail, and people are panicking. I'm panicking in my head because I'm like, oh God, what are we doing in this situation? Because it's the first time we've run into this situation where somebody was really just honest. Like you knew something was bothering him, you could tell, but you didn't realize how effective it was going to be when someone heard it. They were just freaking out. 15 people that didn't know him. And that's the great thing about the show is that, every time somebody comes and shares a story and things like that too, you're amazed how many people actually respond to it because you don't know this person personally, but they're here sharing their story, but so many people were touched by that. I know the other topic we got into was narcissistic exes. Me and another woman, she runs a podcast called You Have the Power. Me and her were talking about it. People were messaging me going, well, listen, after about halfway through, I had to take a break because it was just triggering a lot to me, but it was not a bad way, but in a good way
yeah.
because they're like, well, I could feel the situation. I understood, I could connect you guys because I could feel what you all are talking about, and it's so interesting though, because that's the great thing about podcasting. So like you can reach so many people and you get to meet so many cool people. So like I've had a lot of people in the seat where you're at now just come in and tell me things I didn't even know. Like, some people even revealed things they never told anybody, like, oh, well, I've never told you. Just like you said, I don't really tell a lot of people this, and it's interesting, to hear that, how much, people always tell me all the time, like, oh, well, I love your show because you're so just relaxed. I'm like, yeah, man, like when you get in this topic, you better be ready for an interesting conversation every time you hit record.
Yeah, and I agree, and we keep so many things secret,
hmm
you know?
Because I think it's
And
more because of the shame thing. It's like,
yeah,
you're telling people, hey, my husband committed suicide. Then what are they going to pass judgment on you then? Because that's the first piece of response is, oh, we got to pass judgment because we don't understand. Oh, what had happened? Maybe he was crazy. You know what I mean? All these other dialogue will start coming in your head, and it's not true. It was just he was in pain or whatever his reason was. It was his reason. Like, then afterwards, people are always like, oh, well, I wish we knew what they were thinking. We don't. That's the problem. We don't know what they were thinking. that's the whole idea behind this whole conversation is to make more awareness about these things, you know. And I had a series of videos I did for Suicide Awareness Month. I did a couple. One of them, the woman, my God, this poor lady had to tell her kids exactly what happened to their dad. And they were like, I think 6 and 7, around that age range, somewhere really young. And she's having to explain to these kids, unfortunately, dad, you know, took his own life, and explain to them exactly what happened. It's like, I don't think I could do that. I'm sorry, but some of these people that come out, you're more powerful than I am, because I don't think I could tell people about it, because I'm like, I don't know what to say, because, you know, it's just like, how do you explain it to a child for them to understand these things? But the way she did it was like, she was like, you know, dad saw this color, and the way she was quite genius, the way she did it, broke it down for a child's mind to understand.
Yeah. So my daughter was older and she was living at the house, but she was not at the house when it happened. Yeah, I had another thought, but I forgot it. So
No, it's okay. It's all
ADHD.
right. Well, then, you know,
I
and like
know
I said,
as adults, and so this is something maybe people keep in mind is what really shocked me was the number of people who, when they found out for some way or another, because, you know, it says it on the death certificate, you
yeah,
know, and so
yeah,
you have to turn this over to people
yeah.
or people know, or like people talk. The number of people I met in all kinds of ways who were like, my dad died the same way, or my brother, or this or that. And I look at these people like, how are we all just walking around like everything's okay?
Because we don't
You
talk
know,
about it enough. Let's be
because
honest.
we don't talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. We don't. I think that's the biggest problem. And as you stated earlier, men are the highest number of suicide deaths, unfortunately, you know, and it's like, this is the same question I pose all the time. Is like, when is it going to be enough? Like how many more percentage points do we need for us to start talking about these things and make it more of you know, bring it to light? Cause a lot of these social media sites, like, kind of silence it a little bit. Like TikTok's really big about that. Like, you have to talk in code. I'm like, we're having
Okay.
an
Yeah.
adult conversation. This is an app made for adults. Why can't we talk about these things? Now, if I'm going on a rant, talking about something, okay, I could see that, silence that. But I'm literally laying down, you know, having an open conversation about things about this, you know, trying to see, you know, find other people that have been a part of this and have had this happen, you know, try to bring together the sense of community that we can talk about these things. Like, why can't we discuss it as a society? But we always put it down. Mental health gets mentioned all the time. School shootings happen. Okay, what do? Under the rug. We sweep it under the rug and ignore it. It's like, but instead of dealing with the root cause, you blame an inanimate object. You say, oh, it's the gun's fault. No, but the gun has no thought process, no mind or anything, but it did all these things. How about the person operating it? What state of mind were they in? And then it's like, oh, we knew they had problems. That's the other thing too. Oh, we know it had problems. Okay, so then why didn't you help this person? Like, if you knew they were struggling, why not go get them some help? There's plenty of things readily available nowadays. Hell, you can go to, I could list about 10 different websites you can go to now that you can go get somebody to help you out on these things, you know. And it's just scary because we talk about it and then we just like put a band-aid on it. Well, you know, it's okay. We talked about it for a minute. Sorry, we don't want to. And then it's like you act like it doesn't exist. And then when it happens, it's, oh, well, I didn't know anything about it. But then you go through social media, which people need to realize. So when you put things on social media, they're there. They're there for a long time. People can find them and go back and look at it. Why do you think a lot of politicians and things, when they're running, people go digging through their past to see what the crazy things they posted before? It's like, you always got to constantly be thinking about what you're putting out there, because people could find it and then you're going to have to answer for that question. Well, why did you say this on this day? And then you're going to look at you like, oh, well, you know, it's just like, it's
Yeah.
so taboo to talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah. It is, and it's hard. And you know, not to argue with you, but just because you know those situations are horrible, it doesn't mean you can make somebody do something, sort of
Exactly.
locking them up,
No,
5150
exactly.
ing them, you know, which is why I have very mixed feelings of things like Suicide Awareness Month, because it seems like a lot of the stuff I hear, sometimes it makes me feel worse.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
and
I get it.
I knew I have a doctorate in educational psychology. I know the signs, and I did not see the signs that most of them I don't think were even there. So I think it can be really hard on people where it's like, oh, you should have seen these, this, and this, and
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Were they
yeah. No,
doing
I
this? Were they
agree.
doing that? And you're like, no, no, I didn't. But I guess I should have done more.
Yeah, it almost makes
And
you feel
that's
bad
just,
because it's like pointing out the
yeah,
fact that you should have saw the signs, you know? And
yeah,
that's why I feel like that there's that devil of social media comes in. It's all these people would start blanketing so many things out there. It's like so much misinformation about how things should, oh, well, you should have seen these signs. And it's like, why are you going to blame somebody for that? Like they're already grieving enough. Then you're going to come in here and act predatorial and come after them and say, well, you should have seen all these signs. Really? Because you notice everything too. You're so, you know what I mean? There's no
yeah,
such thing as being perfect. So
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just it
I
makes me
do.
laugh too. It's just because it's so frustrating because it's like I get the idea of the awareness month, but I'm more about the fact that just having the conversation. Like it doesn't matter what month it is, I still talk about it. My thing is I tell a lot of people, watch these people that put these videos out, then watch what they do the next month and see if they're still talking about the same subject. And notice that 90% of them probably aren't talking about it because they're like, oh, it's a new flash word. And I roll my eyes too because where I work, they sent out a thing, oh, mental health awareness month. I'm like, okay,
Mm,
cool. So what are you doing to
yeah.
help this problem? Oh, we offer 4 free sessions, but that's not enough. 4 free sessions isn't going to save, it's going to help nobody. How about come up with different ways to not make people feel burnt out and things like that? We had a guy come on the show named Michael. He runs a podcast. It's talking about burnout, and he was saying that he met with some 500 companies and he was like, hey, listen, in the next 10 years, 5 of you aren't going to be here because your thought process doesn't make any sense. He's like, I'm trying to tell you, you're burning these people out at an alarming rate. And then when nobody wants to work for you, then how are you going to run your operations? You guys at the top are like, oh no, it works just fine. But he's like, no, look at the numbers. You're burning these people at an alarming rate and it's causing all these other mental health issues they've already got. And then you're just exhausting it even further now because now you're making them get burnt out. And then, things are happening from there. And it's like, that's the thing. My thing with the awareness one thing is just like, it's great to bring awareness to these things, but like the conversation doesn't end after that month doesn't end. It's like I
No.
still deal with my anxiety every day. My depression still comes back and forth. It's like I deal with these issues, and then these other people on the flip side take the diagnosis and they're like, well, I'm depressed, so I can't do this. It's like, stop. Don't let it own you. It's a diagnosis. It's not you as a person. You, me as Pete, you as, Dr. Jennifer, you know what I'm saying? We are individuals. The diagnosis we have, that's things we deal with, and those are things that we're working towards fixing, you know what I mean? It's just, it upsets me by the number of things that people, and then the comment section, God, I got to stay out of the comment section.
Yeah.
It just upsets you because you
Yeah,
see
you
like
do.
the ignorant things that people are saying to people. Especially these people are sharing their information. Like there's one guy, I can't think of what his name is though. His thing was that he lost his wife to suicide. He tried to commit suicide. His dad lost his dad to suicide, and he's sharing these things. And then these people are saying such hateful comments in there, and it's like, really, that's what you chose to do with your days? Get negative to somebody who's sharing these kind of things? It's hard enough for him to talk about these things. You can see the guy in the video basically tearing up, and it's like, bro, like you're attacking this guy for being honest with you. I don't get it. And then people are like, then it was the whole men's mental health month thing. Oh well, all those videos came out. They're just making fun of it. It's like, okay, so what are you trying to gain? And then people were the one girl that started the whole big thing where she had the backlash and her whole family members are on there trying to apologize for her. It's like, this is what I'm talking about. Stop doing stupid shit. And then just not to get political, but the Charlie Kirk thing where they started talking about, making jokes about his death and things and people were getting fired. I'm like, well, listen, here's a life lesson for you. Learn to read the documents you sign when you sign up for a job. It literally says in there on the social media policy, if you're posting like crazy things, basically, in a sense, they could let go of you. They're going to cut ties with you because they don't want to be seen with that. Because that goes, okay, well, this company supports his decisions and kind of things like that too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that.
Right. Well, we're at the fun
Yeah.
part of the show, Dr. Jennifer. I don't know if you've
Okay.
ever seen one of these episodes. She's like, all right, let's go. I've been asking people since midway through season 1, actually, when I met a woman named Gretchen. She runs a podcast called The Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. Okay. So when I and her met, we talked about this. She said to me, and the same question I'm about to ask you is, Dr. Jen, if your mental health had a song, what would that song be? It's a great question, isn't it? Now, you could go with the first song that comes to mind. You could break it down however you want. It's your call.
Okay, so the first song that came to mind is Look What You Made Me Do by Taylor Swift.
I love it. Listen, we've had Rage Against the Machine. We've had Michael Jackson Beat It. We had the Doors. Yesterday was the Doors. It's such a great question, though, because it gets you thinking. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, man, that's a pretty good question.
Yeah. And when the first one that comes to your mind, that's probably a really
Yeah,
good
that's what I
one.
usually do. For a lot of people are like, damn, man, that's a really great question. Because, you could break
Yeah.
it down however you want, but I was like, man, I'm stealing this question and running with it too. So
Yeah.
the next question, and the reason that I even started this podcast is if you could break this stigma about mental health, I'm talking about anything that you see on a daily basis that you just like, you want people to stop believing and listen to what really is reality. What would it be?
What I feel like saying is that realizing that everyone is going through something.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, be kind to them and then be kind to yourself, especially like if you're walking around and you're having a really hard day because, you're crying because you're having air conditioning put in, but everyone else isn't walking around all happy either. Like everyone's going through something. And so it's okay that you are, and it's okay that they are. And maybe we can come together kind of just about being human. And so the stigma is that there's something wrong with going through something, it's okay to not be okay. that kind of thing. We're all going through something, some of us more than others at different times, and it doesn't feel good, and we should work on it, and we don't wanna stay there, but it's okay.
I love it. I love it. So before we start wrapping up, I did want to ask you something since you are a grief informed counselor. Did you want to give them some advice about grief? Just some little takeaways for anybody that may have that. Because I know this was one of the point of the conversation, but we got into it. So I figured maybe you could leave them with, somebody that may know somebody is grieving. What can they do for them? Like, just some sound advice from the things that they could have be better accommodating to someone that may be going through something.
So bad with the fall, you're breaking my neck. It's a sign of respect, there's a knife for death, but never will die for the price of a check. I got my integrity and my